Hello and welcome to this AM Supplier Insight with Autotrader as part of our EV Retailing Week. I'm Tim Rose, AM's editor, and joining me here is Mark Palmer, who is Autotrader's Head of Strategy and Insights. Hi there, Mark.
Hello, Tim. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too, as always. So, Mark, interesting times with the EV market. Obviously, we've seen government kind of policy drive some of the growth in the last couple of years, albeit that growth has been slower than the ZEV mandate demands. Now we're what, kind of 3 months into 2026. How do you see the market looking like this year?
It's fair to say it's started a little bit slowly, isn't it? New car started, just a new market at the moment. So I think we should come on to talk to used in a minute. But from a new car perspective, it started a little bit tentatively, I guess, going into 2026. We're on now a sort of early mid-March, and I would expect the uptake of electric cars, new electric cars against the ZEV mandate targets to increase through the year. I think it was fairly flat back in the last year. Going into this year, the trajectory is about the same, but there are a few reasons I think why it's going to go up. First of all, we're seeing more interest, just generally in consumer behaviour. We're seeing more interest on Autotrader, the platform, and normally when we see more inquiries on the platform for new electric cars, a couple of months later we start to see registrations come into the market. There's a bit of a leading indicator there. So I think we've started to see a bit more of an upward shift on Autotrader, which is helpful. I think another thing is that you've got a lot more affordable new electric car models coming into the market this year, and you've got still momentum coming from some of those that only got launched in the back half of last year. So that's the second reason I think there'll be new model introductions. Third one, some of the manufacturers are using or deploying discounts tactically to really go hard at different points of the year. And I think that will continue as well. There's going to be more competition. There's a manufacturer, for example, on the platform at the moment that these new cars account for 0.4% of all new electric car stock advertised for sale, 0.4% stock, 4.4% of all the leads. So a 10, 11 time conversion, really super aggressive offers. So I think that's another thing. The manufacturers are going to do some of that. And then the last thing is a bit intangible. I don't want to bring the mood down here, but when we see, conflict abroad, which we've obviously got at the moment, and we last saw this 4 years ago, oil prices increased 4 years ago when we saw Russia invade Ukraine. We've obviously now got, oil prices rising quite rapidly over the last couple of weeks. That takes a little while to filter through to the pumps, maybe a couple of weeks, and then it's another few weeks before people go and pay their bill at the petrol pump. And with a lot of cases, as we saw in 2022, when petrol prices go up and somebody first feels that big investment, that big layout for petrol, we see a big uptake in electric car inquiries. So there's a possibility that increased fuel or petrol prices will see an increase in EV uptake. So, and we saw that 4 years ago. So those are big reasons why I think it's going to go up. Will it hit the big number at the end of the year? Remains to be seen. I mean, there's enough flex in the ZEV mandate for manufacturers to get to what they need to get to. But I would expect to see steady progress, a few more percentage points of new car penetration.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the big number. I mean, the number is getting bigger every year. And while there is that flexibility, that's starting to ease off from this year, isn't it, Mark? So what do you think the retailers can do now to help kind of influence EV uptake in new and in used car market as well?
Yeah, those are two obviously very different things. I mean, from a new car perspective, it's about the product that you've got and the price at which you can sell it, and how you handle those inquiries or you deal with that conversion in the showroom. And that kind of manufacturer retailer relationship is a big determinant of whether or not the retailer is going to be able to do that, of course. From a franchise retailer perspective, all the training that they've had, the preparation that we've had, electric is no longer a new thing. So it's just making sure that you're squeezing every last inquiry that you can to meet those numbers. Because I guess if the manufacturer is struggling to hit the target, there are different means of getting there which might not be kind of the type of sales channels that you want. I was, saying to new car retailers, when you get that inquiry, making sure that you deliver it, because you can be sure that the manufacturer is going to come back to you at some point in the year asking you to up your volume. From a used perspective, really interesting what's going on in the used market at the moment. With obviously suppliers coming in, and we're seeing big increases in inquiries, especially in the 3 to 6 year old age cohort. Actually, up 50% last year. Inquiries for 3 to 6 year old electric cars. 0 to 3 was up 7%. So good volume. Nowhere near. I mean, the big growth area at the moment in the EV market total is actually 3 to 6 year old used electric cars. So rather than potentially what is the opportunity in used EVs, perhaps used EVs, they are the opportunity for many retailers who are selling cars of that age group. So last thing on that, I mean, different types of retailers, different things, I suppose, different cars available to sell. Familiarize yourself with the product. Be absolutely clear on the questions that buyers are going to ask you, because obviously it's not just about the product, and lots of franchise retailers already know this stuff. But how do we charge? What's public charging like? What do I need to know about battery health and battery degradation? Does it exist? Is it a problem? That sort of stuff. Just making sure that you've got all the facts to hand, so that when somebody comes in and is thinking about a used EV and maybe they've got some different questions, that the sales teams really, really know how to deal with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine a used car customer, they're even more kind of reliant on that, because they certainly at the moment they may well be coming in. This will be the first EV that they've gone for.
Yeah, in many cases, that's definitely it, isn't it? And being really clear on what the benefits are of that product, the fuel savings being the main one. Then there's things like convenience. So the real benefits that anyone who's driven an EV knows about. Those would be the big things to explain to any customer. I think once a prospective buyer is in contact with you, they're probably past a lot of those early initial fear things. And they want some of that more specialist advice, just nudges to get them over the line a bit, and then you can talk about all the strengths of the product and why this car is better than that car, and so on. So it's the same kind of sales process when we talk about retailers who are successfully selling used electric cars. They are saying, this is a car, I've got some different questions to answer, I've got some different things for myself to think about. But actually, buyers are generally quietly enthusiastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that 3 to 6 car segment, actually, the value of EVs in that is very competitive. And you look at it, I mean, 18 months ago, whatever, we went through that real painful period of depreciation with EVs, and quite a few people got a bit hurt for a little bit. But now I think retailers have the confidence to buy stock at the right price and then retail it at the right price.
Yeah, for sure. The market found a level, didn't it, a couple of years ago, and as difficult as that was, and we've just seen inquiries rising at a steady rate ever since then. So the value in the market for the buyer is in many cases exceptional. Actually, half of all the inquiries for used electric cars are on vehicles priced under £20,000. So the market has shifted immeasurably over the last couple of years, and that's why there's a real growth point. You're buying a car that costs you about the same as a petrol equivalent, and cost a fraction of the cost to run. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, and increasingly the case.
Absolutely. So as the used EV park is growing, retailers will need to encourage a broader base. Those kind of people who perhaps kind of had put EVs kind of quite far from their mind, to kind of buy a car that will have a plug. What do you see as the barriers to overcome for this? I guess from the consumer perspective and also from the retailer perspective.
Yeah, the consumer ones are obviously, evidenced by those numbers, those increases. Really, the consumer ones were around cost, they were around charging, and once they get to, the cost is kind of going away, as I've just explained. Charging, if you can charge at home, then stressing the convenience of that. Those are people are beginning more and more to understand those. And in all the time I've worked in the industry, there's nothing like seeing more cars on the road, is there? Than to think, right, this could possibly work for me. Maybe I ought to to consider. And we're getting on towards nearly 2 million electric cars around now, so that's a real a real signifier for a lot of people. So I think from a consumer perspective, we did some research last year. What we found was late last year, lots more people are much more open to electric for their next car. Lots more people, more than 60% of people said they would consider for their next car, which is a massive number. It doesn't mean it's this year. It doesn't mean it's next year. It might be the year after or even the year after that. But, that's clearly a swell. And consideration doesn't always equal a sale. There are still the things that we need to deal with. But there's a lot more consideration for electric among people. Lots of people will say absolutely no way. Let's not kid ourselves. For various reasons, they just really love petrol or diesel cars, don't like the change, don't see why, they ought to do X, Y, Z, don't want to be forced into things. But that is a shrinking number of people. So from a demand perspective, it's growing, it's keeping pace with supply, and we would expect that to carry on. From a retailer point of view, though, there are real considerations. An interesting thing we've observed recently is that from a franchise retailer perspective, in that sort of 3 to 6 year old cohort, franchise retailers hold on to only 44% of the electric car stock that's available. That number for petrol is 65%. So there's a couple of things in there, really. Franchise retailers, there's been an awful lot of change in the types of cars available, part exchange volumes, that kind of thing. They're really, really different over the last few years. And what we're finding with electric then is that that sort of core part of the market, 3, 4, 5, 6 year old cars, is much more spread between the franchise and independent sector. Lots more independents getting on board thinking, I can see this is the way the market's going. So there's a real difference at play. So I think, if you're a retailer out there thinking, if you're a franchise retailer, for example, what that means is you're probably sourcing, stocking, selling different brands, and different models, and having to think about how I do that. What are the benefits of a car that I didn't sell new? How do I get up to speed with all of that sort of thing? So that's kind of one thing for franchise retailers. Lots of questions to be asked. What's the value of those cars? And, I'd say to retailers, use all the tools available, of course, to understand, as you say, what do you buy it in at? What can you sell it at? Start with what you can sell it at, and then go retail back. What should I be buying it for? Will it sell quickly? That kind of thing. So that's a franchise retailer question. For independents, and increasingly we see in independents bringing in electric cars. 1 in 5 independents now has listed an EV for sale, which is real big progress over the last couple of years. The questions for them are different. They didn't have product training from the manufacturer, didn't sell it new. How do they get to grips with the product? Really understanding the cost of buying that car in and the margin opportunity in their local area for that car. That's another big one, of course. And then there are other things, understanding stuff like prep. They isn't always a specialism in an independent retailer on preparing an electric car for sale, or if a car needs a bit of work, or perhaps even some after sales work in the first couple of months after selling that car, do they have a specialist nearby that can take on that kind of work? So there's very different kind of considerations for independent retailers. Last thing on both cases, and actually for the consumer, is the battery. Lots of discussion around battery health and battery certification and all those sorts of things. All the evidence we've ever seen from either the battery testers or the manufacturers themselves is that electric car batteries are performing brilliantly well into their life. So all I'd say to retailers out there is get the battery tested for your own peace of mind, number one, and then make sure that the potential buyer can see that battery's been tested and that it's in a good state of health when you advertise a car for sale, because it takes away a load of doubt for both of you and allows you to talk about the product and how good it is rather than fears over the performance of the battery. Loads of tests available. It's not for us to recommend any in particular, but that would definitely be the recommendation, would be get the car tested and make sure everyone can see that it has been certified. Absolutely.
Because I think it's quite easy to overlook, Mark, that actually EVs have now been in the market since the early EVs have been in the market for kind of more than 15 years. So as an industry, we are kind of understanding the longevity of the batteries, and some of the kind of fear stories that were first kind of imagined in the early days are certainly proving to be unfounded, aren't they?
Definitely. And, here in this country, we're seeing examples of cars. I think we did a test on one last year where it had over 300,000 miles or something like that on the car, an early Tesla Model S. There are those big examples. And then we're learning from other markets all the time, that have been selling electric cars for maybe a bit longer than us. In Norway, battery degradation or battery health has never been a topic of conversation in the market. They just kind of saw it, and the batteries were fine, and they carried on. So absolutely, increasing amounts of data available, increasingly, or in all cases, the evidence is saying, with the odd exception, of course, that electric cars and batteries in particular are absolutely fine. And when I say the odd exception, that is absolutely no different, is it, to to your petrol and diesel cars? We all know makes, models, ages or whatever of vehicles that might be particularly susceptible to engine or mechanical failure or this or that. So it's absolutely no different. You've just got a battery there which is performing really well according to all the evidence.
Yeah. And the industry's been dealing with individual product issues for years, so it's no different there. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for those amazing insights in this. Viewers, thank you for watching. Keep an eye on AIM Online for more of our EV Retailing Week content. As again, thank you, Mark, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.